Welcome to the Future of Us Bookcast, your gateway to insights shaping our AI future. We break down the complex ideas that are defining tomorrow's world and give you the essential knowledge you need to navigate it.
And today, we're tackling a really foundational text, a book that honestly shifted the entire conversation around business strategy, innovation, and why successful companies, well, fail. We're doing an in-depth exploration of the innovator's dilemma.
That's The Innovator's Dilemma, the revolutionary national bestseller that changed the way we do business. It's by Clayton Christensen, the late Harvard Business School professor, published back in '97, revised a bit in 2000.
And it just hit like a bombshell, didn't it?
Right.
Because it wasn't just looking backwards. It gave companies a framework, a way to understand this really tough problem, a problem pretty much every successful company hits eventually.
Right, this core paradox. Why do these really well-run companies, the ones that are aggressive, listen to their customers, invest tons in R&D, why do they still get completely blindsided by certain kinds of technological change?
Exactly. And Christensen's point, the really crucial one, is that it's not usually about bad management. It's not about sleepy executives or dumb decisions.
Yeah.
It's about decisions that were totally logical, totally rational, even critical for success in the short term.
But they end up leading to failure down the road. It's like a trap.
It is a trap, a dilemma, right? So the mission here for us and for you listening is to really get our heads around these principles of disruptive innovation. The idea is, if you understand them, maybe you can harness these forces instead of, ignoring them or fighting them.
Because fighting them seems like a losing game based on the book.
A guaranteed path to decline, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, before we dive into the case studies, we absolutely have to nail this key distinction Christensen makes. It's fundamental. We need to understand the difference between sustaining technologies and disruptive technologies.
Okay, let's break that down. Sustaining technologies. Those are the ones that make products better along the lines customers already care about.
Precisely. Think better performance, more features, higher quality, the stuff you're existing. Beth customers are already asking for. Could be a small tweak, like a slightly longer battery life.
Or something huge like a totally new chip design that makes computers way faster.
Right. Incremental or radical doesn't matter. If it serves the mainstream market better on the dimensions they value, it's sustaining. And here's the key. Established companies, the big players, they almost always win at sustaining innovation.
Because it fits their model, right? It pleases their current customers, fits their profit structure.
It's their processes, their values, everything. They're geared up for it.
Okay, so then disruptive tech. That's the sneaky one.
That's the one that comes out of left field. These innovations, initially, they actually perform worse according to the metrics the mainstream market cares about. But they offer something different. Maybe they're simpler or way cheaper or smaller or just more convenient.
And they don't appeal to the big customers at first.
Not at all. They usually find a foothold in, like a niche market or a brand new market that the big guys don't even see as important. Maybe it's low-end customers or people who weren't even using the existing product category before.
The analogy you mentioned earlier helps here, doesn't it? The sports car versus the scooter.
It's perfect. You're the boss of Ferrari, let's say. You make amazing, fast, high-performance cars. All your R&D, your sustaining innovation goes into making them faster, more luxurious. That's what your rich customers want. You're doing everything right.
Makes sense. Keep the core happy.
Then some startup introduces a cheap little electric scooter. It's slow, it's basic, maybe a bit flimsy. Your Ferrari customers would laugh at it. It's totally irrelevant to their needs.
So you ignore it. It's not a threat.
You ignore it because it offers worse performance on your metrics, speed, luxury. And crucially, you can't make your usual high margins selling cheap scooters. Your whole business structure fights against it.
But the scooter guys, they're learning.
They're learning. They're serving a different market. Maybe city commuters who just need cheap transport. They get better, they refine their tech, their costs are low. And maybe 5-10 years later, guess what? They're not just making scooters anymore. They start making simple, reliable, affordable electric cars.
And suddenly they're eating into your lower-end market share from the bottom up.
Exactly. They disrupted you. Not because their initial scooter was better than your Ferrari, but because it created a new value proposition in a market you ignored, and then its performance trajectory eventually caught up to where it could challenge your core business. That's the dilemma. You ignore the trajectory, not just the initial product.
Wow. Okay. That really sets the stage. Doing the right thing leads you down the wrong path. So how does Christensen prove this happens again and again?
Well, that takes us right into part 1 of the book, Why Great Companies Can Fail. And he starts with a fascinating industry.
Okay, part one, chapter one. How can great firms fail? Insights from the hard disk drive industry. Why disk drives?
He calls it the fruit fly of business research because things happen so fast in that industry. Like geneticists use fruit flies because they reproduce quickly. In disk drives, you see whole generations of technology, companies rising and falling, all compressed into just a few years. It's a perfect laboratory.
So what's the main argument from studying these disk drive fruit flies?
It's that pattern we just talked about. The established leaders, the big names, they were incredibly good at listening to their main customers, the mainframe and mini computer companies back then. They invested heavily in sustaining tech.
Making drives with more capacity, faster access times.
Exactly. And because they did those things so well, that's why they failed when the architecture shifted disruptively. Their success bred their failure.
Let's trace that history a bit. It started huge, right? Like refrigerator size.
Yeah, the IBM RAMAC in the 50s, stored maybe 5 megabytes, cost a fortune. From there, the technology trajectory was just relentless. Capacity soared to 35% increase per year, sometimes more, and the cost per megabyte just plummeted.
And the big companies like IBM, Seagate, Control Data, they managed the sustaining improvements.
Masterfully. Things like thin film heads, new ways to encode data, the basic Winchester architecture, these were all sustaining innovations. They made the drives better along the lines the existing customers valued, mainly density and capacity, and the incumbents always led these shifts. They were good at it.
But the disruption wasn't in those components, it was in the size.
Precisely. The big architectural shifts that killed incumbents were all about shrinking the physical footprint. The first big one was the move from the original 14-inch drives used in mainframes.
Huge bladders.
Huge. To the 8-inch drive. This wasn't driven by mainframes. It was adopted by the new mini-computer market.
And critically, the 8-inch drive was worse at first.
On the old metrics, yes. It had significantly less total capacity than the 14-inch drive's mainframe customers needed. It wasn't powerful enough for them. But for many computer makers who couldn't fit a 14-inch drive in their smaller machines, the smaller size and lower cost were the key selling points. It was a different value proposition.
Creating a new market, basically.
Exactly. And the pattern just repeated. Next came the shift from 8-inch drives used in mini computers to the 5.25-inch drive.
Ah, the desktop PC era arrives.
Right. And again, the 5.25-inch drive was smaller, cheaper, maybe around $2,000 back then. But crucially, its capacity was way less than what the mini computer customers were demanding from their 8-inch suppliers. So the established 8-inch drive makers looked at it and said, our customers don't want this.
So in each jump 14 to 8, 8 to 5.25, the big companies could have made the smaller drives. They had the technical skill.
Oh, absolutely. The technology wasn't rocket science to them. They had brilliant engineers, but they were strategically trapped. They were, as Christensen puts it, held captive by their customers. Their resource allocation process was driven by what their biggest, most profitable customers wanted now.
And those customers wanted bigger, faster versions of the old architecture.
Right. Mainframe users didn't want 8-inch drives. Mini-computer users didn't want 5.25-inch drives. So the sales teams reported back negative feedback, the project proposals for smaller drives got killed or underfunded, and the resources flowed back to sustaining the existing profitable lines.
It's just fascinating how that customer focus, which sounds like Management 101, becomes the anchor dragging them down.
It's the core paradox. And the book pulls out some really stark findings from this HDD history, like this one, which just nails the irony. When the best firms succeeded, they did so because they listened responsively to their customers. Paradoxically, when the best firms subsequently failed, it was for the same reasons.
Wow. Success sows the seeds of failure. And it wasn't a tech failure, it was a timing and focus failure.
Exactly. It wasn't that they couldn't build it, it's that they started too late. Listen to this finding. The 14-inch drive makers were not toppled by the 8-inch entrants because of technology. They failed because their strategic commitment to enter the emerging market in which the 8-inch was initially sold came too late.
They waited until the 8-inch market was big enough to be interesting to them, but by then the entrants owned it.
Right. They let the newcomers have the crucial learning phase, the market creation phase, all to themselves because they were busy serving their big, high-margin existing customers.
And there was this fear factor, too, wasn't there? Cannibalization.
Huge factor. Managers were terrified that introducing a cheaper, lower-performance product would steal sales from their existing high-profit products. The book points this out. The fear of cannibalizing sales of existing products is often cited as a reason why established firms delay the introduction of new technologies.
But the terrible irony is, by delaying, they didn't prevent cannibalization, they just ensured someone else did the cannibalizing later on.
Precisely. The entrants, using the disruptive tech, eventually improved it enough to attack the mainstream market from below. The established firm's delay just handed the future market to the disruptors. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm.
Okay, so Chapter 1 shows what happens. Now, Chapter 2. Value networks and the impetus to innovate explains why it happens. It introduces this really powerful concept, the value network.
Right, the value network. This isn't just about the technology, it's about the whole business environment, isn't it?
Exactly. It's the context.
Mm.
It includes your customers, your suppliers, your competitors, the way you make money, your cost structure, everything. It basically defines what is considered valuable within that specific competitive space.
And the key point is that what's valuable isn't the same everywhere.
Not at all. The book uses the disk drive example brilliantly here. In the mainframe value network, what did customers pay the big bucks for? Capacity. Christensen estimates they'd pay maybe $1.65 for each extra megabyte. That's what mattered.
Okay, but shift to a different network, like early portable computing.
Totally different priorities. There, customers valued size reduction and ruggedness. They might pay $1.17 for every cubic inch they could save in size. Capacity was secondary initially. It's a different definition of good.
That makes sense. Different needs, different willingness to pay for different features.
And this links directly to cost structures. Those mainframe drive companies that had massive R&D labs, complex manufacturing, huge overheads, they needed gross margins of, say, 50 or 60% just to cover costs and make a profit.
Whereas the companies making drives for the early PCs.
They were operating in a different value network. High volume, cutthroat competition on price, simpler components. They might aim for gross margins of maybe 25 to 34%. Much, much lower.
Okay, I think I see the trap forming. If you're that high-margin mainframe company.
And some engineer comes to you with a plan for a small, simple, low-capacity drive that can maybe only command a 30% margin. What happens?
Your internal financial systems scream no.
Right.
It doesn't meet the hurdles. It looks like a money loser compared to squeezing more capacity out for your mainframe clients at 60% margin.
Exactly. The resource allocation process itself kills the disruptive idea. Not because it's a bad idea in the long run, but because it doesn't fit the economic logic of the current value network. The system is designed to allocate resources to the highest return opportunities as defined by the existing business.
It's like the company's immune system attacking the foreign body of the disruptive idea.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the book lays out this almost predictable six-step dance of death for the incumbent, using Seagate's experience with the 3.5-inch drive as a classic case.
Okay, walk us through those steps. How does it usually play out?
Step 1. The disruptive tech, like the little 3.5-inch drive, often gets invented or prototyped inside the established company, maybe by some engineers tinkering in a back room. Seagate engineers had early 3.5-inch prototypes.
Step 2. Standard procedure kicks in. Marketing takes the prototype to the lead customers, the big, important ones.
And what do those customers say? Seagate's big clients, the desktop PC makers who wanted ever-increasing 5.25-inch capacity, they looked at the small, low-capacity 3.5-inch drive and said, nah, not interested. Give us more megabytes. So the project gets shelved or deprioritized.
Step 3. Responding to that customer feedback, the established firm doubles down on sustaining innovation. Seagate focused its resources on pushing the performance of its existing 5.25-inch drives upmarket, making them bigger and faster. Makes perfect sense internally.
Step 4. Meanwhile, new companies are formed, often by engineers who left the established firm, frustrated that their idea was killed. These startups, like Connor Peripherals or Rodime in the 3.5-inch case, take the rejected tech and hunt for a market. It's often messy, trial and error. They eventually found the emerging market for laptops and portables, which needed the small size.
A market Seagate wasn't really serving.
Right. Step 5. Then the crucial part. The entrants start improving their disruptive product along sustaining lines within their new market. The 3.5-inch drives get more capacity, get faster. Soon, their performance starts to overlap with the low end of the established 5.25-inch market. They start moving up market.
And the established guys finally wake up.
Step 6. Yep. Established firms like Seagate belatedly jump in. They finally launch their own 3.5-inch drive, but they're way behind the curve. They're now entering a market defined by the entrants, often forced into a brutal price war. They're not structured to win. They might survive, but they rarely regain leadership.
It's such a clear, tragic pattern, and it all hinges on that resource allocation.
Absolutely. Here's how the book summarizes that internal battle for resources. Sustaining projects addressing the needs of the firm's most powerful customers were almost always preempted resources from disruptive technologies with small markets and poorly defined customer needs.
The system just prioritizes the immediate known moneymakers, and that links to how we even measure progress, right? The S-curves.
Yeah, you know, those classic S-curve diagrams showing how technology's performance improves over time, they work great for tracking sustaining innovation along a single metric, like capacity. But Christensen makes this critical point. A disruptive innovation, however, cannot be plotted in a figure such as sustaining S-curve because the vertical axis for a disruptive innovation, by definition, must measure different attributes of performance than those relevant in established value networks.
You can't plot portability or simplicity on the same graph as megabytes per second and expect it to look good initially. It's measuring the wrong thing for the disruptive context.
Exactly. So let's tie this to today, maybe AI. Think about a big established software company selling incredibly complex, customized AI solutions for major corporations. High margins, long sales cycles, deep integration. That's their value network.
Okay, the mainframe equivalent.
Right. Their sustaining innovation is making their complex AI slightly smarter, slightly more integrated. Now along comes a disruptive technology, maybe a really simple open source AI tool focused only on generating marketing copy, or maybe just summarizing internal documents. It's cheap, easy to use, but initially its performance is way lower than the big custom solution. It can't do 90% of what the big system does.
So the big AI company looks at it.
And says, our customers would never use this. It's not powerful enough, not secure enough, doesn't integrate. Plus, the potential market seems small and the margins are tiny compared to their multi-million-dollar deals. It gets ignored or dismissed.
But the startup making the simple tool finds a niche. Small businesses, maybe, or individual marketers.
Exactly. They find a new value network where simplicity and low cost are paramount. They learn, they improve their niche tool rapidly, and maybe, eventually, that simple tool becomes good enough for tasks that used to require the complex system and starts eating into the big company's market from below. It's the disk drive story all over again, just with algorithms instead of platters.
Okay, so the disk drive example is powerful because it's so fast-paced. But does this pattern hold in slower industries? That brings us to Chapter 3, Disruptive Technological Change in the Mechanical Excavator Industry. Big, heavy machinery. Seems different.
Totally different vibe, right? Earth-moving equipment, not tiny electronics. But Christensen uses this contrast deliberately to show the principles are universal. It's not about the speed of tech change. It's about the type of change and the organizational response.
So did the established excavator companies handle change well sometimes?
Oh yeah, they navigated a huge sustaining shift perfectly. Back in the 1920s, the industry moved from steam-powered shovels to gasoline-powered ones that still use cables to operate the bucket.
Why was that sustaining?
Because it gave the existing customers, big construction firms, mining companies, exactly what they wanted. More power, better performance, digging deeper and faster. It improved performance along the dimensions they already valued. And the established companies like Bucyrus Erie led that transition. No disruption there.
Okay, so where did the disruption come from?
Hydraulics. After World War II, hydraulic systems started appearing as an alternative to the complex cable and winch systems used to move the excavator arms and buckets.
And were early hydraulic excavators better?
Ah, that's the key. No, not for the mainstream market. Early hydraulic machines were small, weak, couldn't lift much, didn't have the reach. Their bucket capacity was tiny, maybe a quarter of a cubic yard, whereas the big contractors needed machines that could handle 1, 2, even 4 cubic yards or more for big earth-moving jobs.
So completely useless for the existing customers.
Pretty much. The big guys looked at them and said, what am I going to do with that toy?
But someone found a use. A new value network.
Exactly. The hydraulics appealed to a totally different group. Small residential contractors, plumbers, guys laying sewer pipes. They didn't need massive capacity. They needed maneuverability to work in tight spaces like backyards and trenches. They valued the simplicity of hydraulics compared to the finicky cable systems. Think of the early backhoes like the Bobcat. That was the disruptive application.
Okay, so a new market emerges that the big players aren't really in. How did the established firms like Bucyrus Erie react to hydraulics? Did they see it coming?
They saw it. They weren't technologically blind. They even acquired a company making hydraulic backhoes, so they had the capability. But here's where the value network trap snapped shut again.
What did they do?
They tried to make hydraulics fit their existing value network. They developed hybrid machines, like one called the Hydrohoe, that tried to use hydraulics but scale it up to meet the high-capacity demands of their mainstream customers.
Trying to force the new tech into the old mold.
Precisely. And these hybrids were often commercial failures. They were complex, expensive, and didn't really satisfy either market well. They weren't simple and cheap enough for the new hydraulic market, and they weren't powerful or reliable enough initially for the old cable market.
Meanwhile, the newcomers,
The entrants, companies like Sherman Products, just embraced the limitations of early hydraulics. They focused solely on that new market of small contractors who valued what hydraulics could do well, maneuverability and simplicity. They didn't try to compete with the big cable shovels directly.
and the hydraulic technology got better over time.
It improved rapidly. The performance trajectory, measured in things like bucket capacity and reliability for the hydraulic applications, shot upwards. By the 1960s, hydraulic excavators had become powerful enough to meet the needs of the mainstream construction market.
And the cable shovels.
They were toast, completely displaced,
Yeah.
and the established companies that made them, devastated. Christensen notes that only about 4 out of 30, maybe, of the established cable shovel manufacturers successfully made the transition to hydraulics. Most went bankrupt or were acquired.
That's brutal. It really hammers home that the dilemma isn't about the specific tech, it's about the market context.
Exactly. And the book captures the manager's perspective, the feeling of helplessness almost. The dilemma in managing the disruptive technology in the heat of the battle is that nothing went wrong inside these companies. Hydraulics was a technology that their customers didn't need, indeed, couldn't use.
They were doing their jobs, listening to their customers, maximizing profits in their known world.
While the winners took a different path entirely, the book highlights the entrance strategy. The successful entrants accepted the capabilities of hydraulics technology in the 1940s and 1950s as a given and cultivated new market applications in which the technology, as it existed, created value.
Find a place where the weakness is actually a strength, or at least irrelevant, and build from there. Don't try to fight the old guard on their home turf immediately.
That's the essence of it. Which leads nicely into the next chapter's theme, this natural pull companies feel.
Right, Chapter 4, what goes up can't go down. This sounds like it's about market direction.
It is. It's a short but really critical chapter that bridges from understanding the problem to thinking about solutions. It explores this fundamental asymmetry in corporate strategy.
Asymmetry how?
Companies find it relatively easy, almost natural, to move up market, meaning chasing bigger customers, more demanding applications, higher performance products, and crucially, higher profit margins.
Why is that easier?
Because financially it looks great. Selling more expensive stuff generally improves profitability, boosts revenue growth, makes investors happy, increases stock price. All the internal metrics and external rewards push companies in that upward direction. Go after the high end.
Okay, makes sense. But the flip side.
The flip side is that they find it incredibly difficult, almost impossible to move down market. That means launching simpler, cheaper, lower performance products, often enabled by disruptive technology, to serve less demanding customers or new low-end markets.
Why is moving down so hard?
Because the math is brutal. If you're a company built on, say, 50% gross margins, introducing a product that can only sustain 25% margins looks like a disaster internally. It drags down the company's average profitability. It potentially cannibalizes your high-margin sales. Your existing cost structure makes it hard to even make money at that low price point.
Plus, you're competing against lean startups who are built for those low margins.
Exactly. They have the right cost structure from day one. The incumbent tries to launch a low-end product using its high overhead structure, and it just hemorrhages money until the project gets killed. The organizational gravity, the financial incentives, everything pulls up away from the disruptive down market opportunities. It feels like swimming upstream to try and go down.
Okay, so we've seen the trap, the value network, the asymmetry. It paints a pretty grim picture for established companies. But the book isn't just about doom and gloom, right? Part 2 is about managing this.
Exactly. Part 2 shifts gears. Managing disruptive technological change. Now that we understand why good management fails in these situations, Christensen lays out the principles managers need to actually navigate these treacherous waters. It's about understanding the forces and creating structures to counteract them.
And there are 5 core principles, right? These are like the operating manual for dealing with disruption.
That's a good way to think of it. Let's go through them. Principle. #1. Companies depend on customers and investors for resources.
This sounds obvious, but I guess the implication is the key.
It's huge. It draws on something called resource dependence theory. Basically, managers aren't completely in control. the resources they need to survive and grow money. Orders come from outside, primarily from customers and investors. And those resource providers, especially the most powerful current customers, dictate where the resources flow.
So if your biggest customers demand faster widgets, the money flows to the faster widget department.
Right. And if they don't want the cheap, simple, disruptive doodad, then resources will actively flow away from the doodad project. The company's internal systems, budgeting, planning, incentives are inherently designed to allocate resources towards things that satisfy the current, powerful resource providers. They're built to kill ideas that don't fit that mold.
Like the disruptive ideas targeting small, uncertain markets.
Exactly. So what's the solution if the main organization is programmed to kill disruption?
You have to take it outside the main organization.
That's the core implication. You need to create an independent, autonomous organization, a spin-off, a separate division, whatever, specifically for the disruptive technology. Crucially, this new unit needs to be insulated from the parent company's mainstream customers and its mainstream cost structure and profit expectations.
So it can live on the lower margins of the disruptive market.
And find its own customers, develop its own processes without being crushed by the demands of the parent's value network.
Okay, that makes sense. Principle 1 leads to separation. What's principle? #2. Small markets don't solve the growth needs of large companies.
This one is just brutal corporate math. Think about growth targets. If you're a, say, $40 million company, finding a new $8 million market is fantastic. That's 20% growth. People get promoted.
Right, that moves the needle.
But now imagine you're a $4 billion company. To get that same 20% growth, you need to find $800 million in new revenue this year.
Wow, okay.
Now, where do disruptive technologies start?
In tiny niche markets, maybe worth only a few $1,000,000 at first.
Exactly. So the $4 billion company looks at a potential $10 million disruptive market and, completely rationally, says that's rounding error. It's too small to possibly matter to our overall growth. Why would the CEO spend their precious time on something that can't solve their massive growth problem?
So it gets ignored or starved of resources because it just isn't big enough, fast enough.
Precisely. The scale is wrong. The solution, therefore, is about matching organizational size to market size.
Yeah.
Meaning, you don't assign a disruptive project targeting a $10 million market to your main $4 billion organization. It will get suffocated. You assign it to a small organization, maybe that independent unit we just talked about. For a small unit, a $10 million market is exciting. They can get traction, learn, grow with the market, and feel successful.
Let the project size match the organization size.
You got it. It allows the project to thrive on its own terms.
Okay, principle 3 sounds like a headache for planners. Principle #3. Markets that don't exist can't be analyzed.
Oh, this one drives traditional managers crazy because good management, as typically taught, relies heavily on market research, data analysis, financial projections, 5-year plans.
All the stuff you need to get budget approval.
Exactly. And those tools work really well for sustaining innovations. You can survey your existing customers, ask them how much faster they want the widget, project the demand curve. The market is known.
But disruptive tech creates new markets, right?
Or redefines existing ones based on new parameters. And you simply cannot research or analyze a market that doesn't really exist yet, or where the terms of competition are completely different. If you ask existing customers about a disruptive product that currently performs poorly on their key metrics, they'll say they don't want it. Your market research will come back negative. Your financial projections will show 0 revenue.
So you can't plan your way into a disruptive market using the standard playbook?
Trying to forecast it is futile. Christensen advocates for something called discovery-based planning instead.
What does that involve?
It means you accept up front that your initial strategy and forecasts are probably wrong. The goal of the initial investment isn't immediate profit, it's learning. You set up cheap, fast experiments. You launch early prototypes. You watch how real customers use them or misuse them. You pivot based on what you learn. You assume you'll fail multiple times before you find the right product market fit. It's about learning by doing, not planning by forecasting.
That requires a different kind of management culture. Okay, principle #4. An organization's capabilities define its disabilities. This sounds deep.
It really gets to the heart of why that separate organization we talked about is often necessary. An organization's capabilities, what it's good at, aren't just about its people or its resources. They're embedded in its processes and its values.
Processes being how things get done, the routines.
Yeah, the established ways of working, how products are developed, how sales are made, how resources are allocated. These processes are designed for efficiency and predictability within the current value network. And values are the criteria the company uses to make decisions like required profit margins, acceptable market size, how important prestige is versus cost.
Okay, so processes and values make a company good at its current business. How do they become disabilities?
Because those very processes and values, honed for success in one context, make the organization incapable of succeeding in a different context, like a disruptive market. They become rigid. A process designed for meticulous, high-cost, high-quality development for many computers is fundamentally disabling if you suddenly need to rapidly develop a low-cost, good-enough product for the PC market.
The old process literally prevents success in the new game.
Exactly. The values clash too. If your company values high margins above all else, that value makes it incapable of prioritizing a low-margin disruptive project. The capability, optimizing for high margins, defines the disability, inability to pursue low margins.
So managers need to figure out if the disruptive challenge fits the existing capabilities.
That's the critical assessment. Can we tackle this new thing using our current processes and values? Often, especially with true disruption, the answer is no. And if it's no, you can't just tweak the old organization. You need to create new capabilities, often by setting up that separate entity with processes and values tailored specifically to the disruptive task.
Right, building the capability from scratch where it's needed. Okay, last one. Principle, #5. Technology supply may not equal market demand. What's the gap here?
This is about the pace of improvement. Companies, especially in technology, get really good at improving their products along established trajectories. Think Moore's law for chips, or that relentless increase in disk drive capacity we talked about. The supply of performance often increases faster than the demand for that performance from the average mainstream customer.
We get more power than we actually need.
Often, yes. Christensen calls this overshooting. The disk drive companies kept making drives with massively more capacity, maybe growing 50% a year, but the average PC user might have only needed 25% more space each year. Eventually, the drives offered way more capacity than most people could even use.
So the technology becomes too good on that main metric.
Exactly. It overshoots the market's ability to absorb or value the improvement. And when that happens, the basis of competition starts to shift. Once performance on the traditional dimension, like capacity or speed, is good enough for most customers, they stop making purchase decisions based primarily on that dimension. They start caring more about other things.
Like what?
Reliability becomes important. Then maybe ease of use, convenience, and eventually, price often becomes a major factor. The market effectively says, okay, it's fast enough, it holds enough data, now I want one that's smaller, easier to install, and cheaper.
And that shift creates the opening.
It creates a vacuum at the low end. The established companies are still busy pushing the performance frontier way beyond what the mass market needs, stuck in their high-cost structure. This allows competitors using simpler, cheaper, disruptive technologies, which might have initially been deficient on the old performance metrics, to suddenly become good enough on the new metrics the market cares about: convenience, price.
That's when the scooter company's cheap electric car starts looking attractive because it's reliable enough, convenient enough, and way less expensive than the over-engineered sports car.
You nail it. The market shifts its priorities right under the incumbent's feet, making the disruptive alternative viable for the mainstream.
Okay, that's a lot to absorb. We've gone from the paradox of failure, through the mechanics of value networks and resource allocation, to these 5 principles for managing disruption. Let's try to wrap up the core arguments of the book.
I think the absolute central message is that good management, as traditionally defined, listening to your best customers, investing where profits are highest, focusing on predictable markets, that very approach is what systematically causes successful companies to fail when faced with disruptive innovation. It's a structural problem, not usually an individual failing.
Right. The failure isn't because they lack the technology or were lazy. It's baked into the economic and organizational systems that made them successful in the first place. The value network and the way resources get allocated are the real culprits.
And because of that, the solution isn't just try harder or be smarter. It requires fundamentally different strategies and structures. Recognizing the crucial difference between sustaining and disruptive innovation is step 1. Step 2 is often creating separate, protected spaces, small, autonomous organizations to nurture disruptive technologies. These units need the freedom to pursue small, uncertain markets with different cost structures and values.
Using that discovery-based approach, learning by doing.
Exactly. So let's bullet point the key takeaways for everyone listening. What are the absolute must-remember points from the innovator's dilemma?
Okay, first, good management is the trap. Sticking to the established rules that brought success can directly lead to ignoring or killing off the innovations that will define the future.
Second, customer constraints. Your best, most profitable customers today actively, though often unintentionally, prevent you from investing in the disruptive technologies needed for tomorrow because those technologies don't meet their current needs.
Third, value network dictates decisions. The whole ecosystem you operate in, your profit margins, cost structure, competitor actions, customer expectations, creates powerful filters that automatically screen out disruptive ideas that don't fit the current model.
Fourth, overshooting market demand. Keep an eye on whether your technology's performance is improving faster than your customers actually need. When it does, the game changes, and lower cost, simpler alternatives suddenly become viable competitors.
And finally, fifth, the path to survival. Don't try to cram a disruptive innovation into your existing organization. It needs a different home. Commercialize it through a small, independent unit with the freedom to find its own market through trial and error, matched to its own unique capabilities and cost structure.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Us Bookcast. We hope you found inspiration in these ideas. Don't forget to subscribe and share together. We're co-creating the world of tomorrow.